So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jack Lovell, Industry Manager at Cycling Industries Europe. I'm glad to say we have about 150 registrations for today's webinar, Recycling Webinar on Circularity and Sustainability. We have a great lineup of panelists and a great moderator, Jana Fliegel from Velo Concept. With Cycling Industries Europe, we look at innovation a lot. We include this in our work on the Cycling Innovation Network, which is one of our working group, where we look into how to accelerate innovation in the cycling community. I'd like to hand over the floor now to Jana Fliegel, who's kindly accepted to moderate today's discussion. Jana Fliegel works with Velo Concept and is a project coordinator and manager. Is that correct, Jana?
Yes, thank you, Jack. That's correct. I'm a project manager at Velo Concept, and more specifically, I work for the Velo Lab, a bicycle innovation platform based in Berlin. And also one of our main concerns is pushing forward sustainability and circularity, not only in the bicycle industry, but in the whole sector. So that really fits our topic for today. Yeah, and as Jack said, I will be moderating today's session. And we will have 4 speakers today. Each of them will give a short presentation about their company's approach to circularity. And after the 4 presentations, we will have a Q&A session of 20 to 30 minutes. And for you, it's important that we will have all of the questions after the presentations. So keep in mind what you want to ask, but you can also already put all of your questions into the chat. So feel free to write down all of your questions into the chat, and I will sort them out and organize them and ask them to all of our speakers after the sessions. And it would be easier for me if you would indicate who you're asking the question to, so that way I can organize the questions better. And yeah, so I will now introduce all of you 4 speakers in the right speaking order. And after that, we will have our presentations. So first up, we have Richard Berger from SwapFeeds. Richard, you can give a little wave. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, he's the co-founder and sustainability director of SwapFeeds. SwapFeeds, as you might know, is an Amsterdam-based company founded in 2014 that offers personal bikes on a monthly rental basis. And Richard leads SwapFeeds' vision to become a company with a climate neutral footprint, as well as a fully circular products by 2025. Richard aims to embed sustainability into everything that SwapFeeds does, from the engineering perspective, where SwapFeeds aims to create fully circular bicycles, to a cultural perspective where every SwapFeeds employee shares sustainability values, and collaborations are pushed to mobilize the industry. And Richard also studied marine technology in Delft. Our second speaker is Toussaint Vatine. He is the CEO and co-founder of Upway. Hi, Toussaint. And Upway is an online store for refurbished e-bikes. The startup was founded in Paris in 2021, and they aim to provide easy access to e-mobility and buy, refurbish, and sell their e-bikes on their online store. Currently, the refurbished e-bikes are available in France, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, and the United States. Previously, Toussaint was regional manager at Uber Eats and responsible for Northern and Eastern Europe. And Toussaint studied corporate and public management at HEC Paris and Sciences Po. And next up, we have Sven Terhardt. Hi, Sven. He is head of sales and marketing for Egosbike. Egosbike is the first bicycle made from recycled plastic. Sven was born and raised on the German-Dutch border and comes from a commercial background as an industrial manager. He studied industrial engineering in Cologne and worked for 3.5 years in Amsterdam at an e-bike manufacturer as a product manager. And now Sven is back in Cologne and dreams of a more sustainable future for the bike industry, with the big goal of a German bike or / mobility revolution following Amsterdam's example. Last but not least, I will introduce Anna Drew. She is head of strategy and sustainability at Frog Bikes and will give us insights into her approach to sustainability and circularity. And so Anna is in charge of strategy and sustainability at Frog Bikes, global children's bicycle brand. The British company has won numerous awards, such as the Queen's Award in 2018 and the King's Award in 2023. Anna is a passionate advocate for getting children into cycling, having two of her own, and is now strengthening Frog's business with a new focus on sustainability by reducing its emissions and employing circular principles in both its bikes, designs, and in the business processes. So once again, our order will be Richard, Toussaint, Sven, and then Anna presenting. Richard, I will now hand over to you. Feel free to start your presentation.
Thank you, first of all, Jana, for introducing me. Indeed, I'm Richard. I started the company together with two of my co-founders 9 years ago. We had the idea originally of bicycle as a service, not necessarily that we were the first to think about it, but we were thinking about it in a context of the ownership model provides, well, a lot of hassle. It provides a lot of benefits, but it also provides a lot of hassle. So you need to buy, you need to maintain, you need to check out which bike, you need to dive into what technology is suitable for you. And you have to take care of it along the lifetime, and maybe even at the end of his lifetime, sell it or leave it in the street, and then it becomes a nuisance for the city. All kinds of things that come with the ownership model that we thought was a hassle. And then again, where there's a hassle, there's an opportunity for solving that hassle, and that's what we thought about. Hey, bicycle as a service could really work. So we started with this concept where you sign up, you use one of our bikes, and if there's anything wrong with it, you notify us and we will be there within 48 hours. And that's all for a fixed monthly fee. So you don't own the bike afterwards, you just use the bike to go from A to B without any hassle, and we'll be there when there's anything wrong with it. And that's still how we work today. So we call it the subscription model. It's between ownership and sharing, and it's, let's say, the new category, because it is something different than the other two. And we say it's the best of both worlds, of course. The ownership model works for a lot of people, but also I can imagine that if you don't feel like you're very fixed, you don't want to take care of your bike, or you don't have the time to take care of your bike, or you want a more sustainable way of using products, then either sharing or subscription could work. But if you feel like, hey, I do still want my own bike, my own key, my own access to it, then subscription can be better than sharing and those kind of things. So we see the benefits of both worlds. And since also the talk of today is about sustainability and recycling, this model is also part of the circular economy, and it forces us to create bikes that last in a comfortable and that are comfortable to ride. So what we say is we lead the movement to more livable cities, and that's twofold. First of all, we have a new model which makes it accessible for people to start cycling. And here you see on the background Paris. And what I also think this image shows clearly is how much less space you need to cycle versus driving through the city. But I don't need to convince all of you on that topic. But second, the second thing we would try to lead the movement to is to also be the most circular company out there, and create circular products. So that's why we have these targets. We want to use business as a force for good. So we want to create sustainable mobility for all. We want to create 100% circular products in 2025. So that's a product that doesn't generate any waste, made from renewable materials, and has zero pollution across its lifetime. And together with that, we want to be a climate neutral company in 2025. And that's while being certified as a B Corp. I think the first B Corp certified subscription cycling company or cycling company there is. So really proud on that. So what is circularity for us? Officially, there's not a real definition on circularity. I think the work Upcycle is doing is also great on making sure we use already the product that is out there. And at the same time, we also try to make products that are can be used over and over again for indefinite. And that's why we have to design our own products, because the product that is out there is not yet made to last indefinite. So we really want to focus on a product that's made from renewable resources, generates no pollution, and generates zero waste in and across its lifetime. And at the same time, it's also about maintaining value. So if you only follow this definition, you can also make, I don't know, a bicycle out of paper that lasts only for one day, but that in the end is not maintaining the value for a very long time. So what we also try to achieve is maintaining the value of products as long as possible. And that's best explained by this image, not made by me, but this is really something that we have in our company on a daily basis. So we are in the product use phase, but after the product use, can we reuse parts? Can we reuse bikes? Can we repair parts? Or if one step further, we can start remanufacturing together with our suppliers, repurposing, or maybe even refurbishing. And it's the final step. We want to do recycling, and then recycling can be closed loop or open loop, and that's all the possibilities within this circular definition. And to get to that, we have three important characteristics of our business. So first of all, we have continuous product improvements for creating more bikes that last. On the left, you see the improvement of the defects per bike per year. For, in this example, the deluxe bike, and there you see it's reduced by 27% year over year in 2019 versus 2018. And that means that not just for the new bikes, but for the entire fleet of bikes, we managed to upgrade some parts, replace some parts, improve our repairs so we can have less broken bikes throughout the year. In total, we reduced our amount of defects by 66% already. The second one is because these bikes come back to us every now and then, we can do continuous repairs. Repairs like lights or checks of the tires or the brakes or like chain, those kind of checkups, kind of preventive maintenance checkup, make sure that the bike lasts for a very long time. And that also our cost of repair in the end are lower. And that's the beauty, I think, of this model, is that you have an incentive as a company to reduce the amount of defects, also for the member, for yourself as a company to reduce costs, and also for the planet to reduce impact. And last but not least, since we have a lot of bikes that come back in a very specific set of service areas, service points, we can collect material and recycle that in a closed loop manner. Normally with inner tubes, for example, you can only recycle that at home. You cannot recycle it at home. You can only throw it in a general waste bin or hand it in via your local bicycle mechanic. Because we have so many bicycle tires, inner tubes, like something like 20,000 inner tubes in a year we consume, and we collect those in 20 different warehouses, we can have a very efficient recycling process together with our suppliers. So the goal of 100% circular bike, correct me if I'm over time, but this is the final bits of the introduction. The goal of the 100% circular bike is also aimed towards the e-bike, and we're now planning to launch a new e-bike later this year, which is called the Power Plus, and that's really the most circular bike we have so far. It's really designed for durability, repairability, and it has some great innovations in there. For example, a battery repair partnership, so we can, before batteries are thrown away or brought back to the supplier, there we have the possibility to repair part of it, so it remains alive longer. All the plastics on here are closed loop plastics, so not made by fossil fuel materials, and also brought back into the loop and reused again. We also have product as a service tires, so just like few of our other e-bikes, here we have no longer tires that we buy, but we use them. Just like members can use our bike and not own the bikes, we also use the tires and not own the tires. That's together with Vittoria. The frame is built in such a way that it can fit multiple motors, so we're not dependent on one supplier. And that's also very circular because especially with e-bikes, the motor defines the shape of the frame. And if the supplier of that engine, the motor, decides to not service that engine anymore, then our frames become obsolete. And with this innovation, we can keep on using this frame even if we change engine supplier. And last but not least, we do a lot of mono materials on this instead of combined mixed materials, so we can recycle it more easily. In a later stage, we're also going to use more bio-based lubricants, so we also generate no pollution during the lifetime. We are working on engine as a service, we are working on battery as a service, and we are working on improving the recycled content. And on the battery, I just want to highlight one innovation because Jana, I think you asked me to mention this. We also presented this last week on or 2 weeks ago on Eurobike, and that we are together with these partners. We are working on a battery that lasts for at least 10 years. And right now that's still unthinkable in the industry, but we think it's possible, and we really designed this battery to last for that period. So it's easy to repair. The cells, the BMS can be easily replaced. All kinds of innovations in here that we can make sure that the bike or the battery lasts for a very long time, and it reduces the impact a lot. So this is something we are working on. It's not yet live, but we think we can make that later this year or beginning of next year. So that's quickly it. The last thing we mentioned is, does circularity in the end lead also to more sustainable products? Well, the answer is yes. We did for the deluxe bike, we did a life cycle analysis, and in the end, a circular product uses less resources, including the service part, so the vehicles driving around and the logistics needed to have this closed loop system. And already we are 35% more sustainable than a comparable bike, and we think we can even do better. So yeah, that's quickly Swapfiets and what we do within the company, and I'm curious to hear all the other stories and hear all your questions, and happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Richard. As I said, we will have the Q&A after all of the presentations, so we'll wait for that, but there's already quite a few questions in the chat. Some of them are quite precise and some of them are more broad. Maybe if there's a precise question, you can already answer them in the chat, but feel free to I will post them after the presentations. So next we have Toussaint. Feel free to start sharing your screen, and I'm looking forward to your presentation as well.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Richard. It was great to hear more about Swapfiets, a company we definitely look up to and learned a lot from. So I really appreciate the deep dive. Hi, everyone. I'm Toussaint. I'm the co-founder of Upway. We are a leading platform that buys, refurbishes, and resells second-hand e-bikes. And we operate in Europe and most recently in the US since March. But I'll touch on that in a minute. Before I dive into that, I wanted to share a bit of a background story, if you allow me, because 2 years ago I was actually doing my first lead jog. And so, if some of you are familiar with the UK, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a slightly revisited version, but it's land ends to John O'Groats. It's effectively the cycling trip that crosses all of the UK. And I did that with my wife, and she was actually on an e-bike. And so I had been bikepacking on a bike for 10 years, and I first got a first real understanding of how powerful and convenient e-bikes can be on that trip. And it just happened that trip came after I had just quit my job after spending about 8 years at Uber. And so 4 of those years were spent in the UK, looking after Uber Eats in the region. And as I was leaving the UK and moving back to France, I wanted to make sure I got to visit the country. But what got interesting is that as I was moving back to France and discussing with my co-founder what business ideas we could be building together, the instinct that I got during this cycle trip became a business. As my wife was looking for an e-bike to buy herself, we both wanted to explore a second-hand option. And really what we found was that there was no way we could trust just buying from a random individual and risking that the motor or the battery or any of the electronics would be in poor condition and would fail on us just a couple of days or weeks into our trip. And so we had to end up buying new. And when I made it back to France and we started exploring business ideas, we realized that there was actually a massive opportunity to make sure that all of those e-bikes that are getting bought new can end up having a second life and can end up having multiple owners over their lifetime. And so as we explored and double-clicked into the category, I think what fascinated us, and this is nothing new to most of the audience, I'm sure, but what fascinated us is just the sheer speed of adoption of e-bikes on the one hand, but also on the other hand, the absolute volumes we're talking about. When you think about the fact that there's already 25 million e-bikes in circulation already in Europe, and that there's over 5.5 million new e-bikes being sold each year, you realize that there's a very, very large challenge coming up, which is what is going to happen as those bikes become a couple of years old, that their first owner starts having less usage for them and maybe needs to upgrade or doesn't have a need for them for a couple of months. And so it became very clear to us that there was both a very large pool of bikes out there that were probably already more or less available for a new owner, but that no one could really make that transaction trustworthy. And so we were, and finally we looked at those numbers and the projections that came from them, and it became clear that we were heading towards around 15 million plus units getting sold each year at some point in the next 10 years or so, and looking at 100 million plus units in circulation at any point in time. So those orders of magnitude really made us take a step back and recognize that if we were able to build a bit of trust in that secondhand market, maybe more people like my wife would trust buying a secondhand product rather than going for a new one every time they needed to make an acquisition. And so we set ourselves the goal of effectively giving a new life to as many e-bikes as possible by buying them secondhand, refurbishing them professionally, and then selling them under warranty to a new owner. And effectively, we wanted to make sure that ideally we avoid one thing happening, which is today in France alone, there's about 1.5 million non-electric bikes that get thrown away every year, largely because they just haven't been used and maintained for a couple of months, sometimes a couple of years. And so they end up in such a bad state that people would just throw them away rather than try to make something out of it. And what we'd love is make sure that we can avoid building that bad habit in the first place when it comes to e-bikes, which come with motors, batteries, and just heavier equipment in the first place. And so that's how we got started. And ultimately, we built a business that is fully embedded in circularity from the get-go, in the sense that today we have 3 workshops and warehouses in Paris, Berlin, and New York. And in those places, we've been able to date to give a new life to over 10,000 e-bikes. What we do is make sure that we buy secondhand from whatever the previous owner was. That could be an individual willing to upgrade and using trade-in in one of our partner retailers, or going straight to us to sell their bikes directly to us. Or it could be a fleet owner, a retailer, or a leaser, or a shared mobility player that at the end of the day wants to make sure they can extract residual value from their fleet. And so we are in a position now with our team of over 40 mechanics to actually proceed and process the refurbishment itself in-house, and make sure that we are able to repair any part that needs to be, replace any part that needs to be replaced, and ultimately bring the bike back to the absolute best condition possible. And then we sell it online and deliver to consumers at home, making sure that anyone has a chance to ultimately get access to an e-bike and get access to an e-bike at a lower price than they would potentially afford in the first place. And so we've done that now in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and in Germany. And as recently as March this year, we started operating in the US. Now, of course, we cannot do that alone. We are just a very, very small part in the kind of circular movement in this broad ecosystem. And whilst we have the ambition to really reach a large scale and be able to refurbish, thousands, dozens of thousands, and then ultimately hundreds of thousands of e-bikes this is a process that happens hand in hand with a lot of other players in the ecosystem. I think the first people that we tend to work with a lot are retailers, because we are in a position to give them the tools to enable their customers to return and trade in their old bike when they're buying a new one. And that's one of the ways we can truly ensure that no e-bike stays idle for months and years into a garage and actually gets upgraded and gets changed anytime their owner, wants to go for a new one. And so we've got now more than 700 retailers using our program that gives them the ability to price in real time their customers' old bike when they're in store and turn that into ultimately a voucher if they're willing to upgrade and buy a new one in store. We're the ones collecting the bike, paying the retailer for it, and giving that bike a new life. But we're also working closely with manufacturers. An increasing number of them are really keen to make sure that they've designed bikes that, for the most part, can have a very long lifetime, but might not benefit from it if the user actually ends up stopping using it. From Stromer to Winora to Riese & Müller Specialized. And also in some cases, especially those selling direct to consumer, we're enabling them to effectively, we're managing their returns directly so that we can inspect, refurbish, and resell any returned e-bike that was sold new. Third is that we work closely with fleet owners, and at the end of the day, there's so many fleet managers out there, and whilst the swap fleets of the world are capable of maintaining their fleet and keeping their fleet alive within their own ecosystem, some fleet owners are not in a position to do so and need to find an outcome for bikes after a couple of years of rental or leasing. And so we're able to buy back some of these fleets and effectively make sure that all of those large bikes as a service aren't ultimately going to waste after their first user has been done with it. And one of the conversations we're having with shared mobility players, the Tiers, Limes, etc. of the world, is making sure that their firmware ultimately enables a consumer ownership after they've been used for a couple of months or a couple of years into their cities in a shared manner, just to make sure that once again, those assets aren't thrown to waste once they get to the end of their first life. And finally, we're working closely with governments, whether that being local authorities at the city or regional level or at a country level. Most recently, working with the French government to make sure that all the incentives that are being deployed to help people buy an e-bike can actually apply to used e-bikes as well, sold by professionals, just to make sure that the absence of that doesn't encourage people to avoid buying secondhand, and that it prevents the secondhand market from emerging and being very liquid, which is absolutely essential to minimize the waste footprint of the category. So having said all of that, I'll close the loop by saying that we're still very early days in that process. As I said, there's millions of e-bikes being sold every year, and we're far from refurbishing millions of them every year as well. And so we look forward to working with a number of you and a number of the partners I just mentioned in making sure that bikes can be not only designed, but actually effectively resold and have as many owners as possible over as long a lifetime as they possibly can get to. And I'll close it there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Susan. There were already also a lot of questions coming in for you, but yeah, feel free to also keep some questions for the Q&A afterwards. But thanks for already answering some of them, Richard. So next we will have Sven. Please feel free to share your screen and give your presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Jana, for introducing me or us, and thanks to Richard and to Sven already for the nice presentations. I want to introduce to you to the Aigus bike today, and first I will give a small introduction about Aigus, the company by itself, then the Aigus bike, a bike made from recycled plastic, and then also I want to give the options to AM companies to work together with us on these projects. So Aigus is quite a big company. Actually, we are based in Cologne. We have 4,600 employees, 2,500 of them in Germany. Last year, we had this already for a long time as a target. We had the $1 billion market, which was really great. So our main products are energy changes and bearings and linear systems. and we are using that money which we get also for small startups. For example, we have a startup for 3D printings, or also for robotics. And one startup in the company is the IGUS bike. We are already, since not a lot of people know us in the bike business, but we are already since 30 years in the bike market, mainly with our bearings. For example, you see us in SRAM derailleur systems, or in Magura brakes, or in parallelogram seat tubes. So, and in 2005, our CEO, you can see him here on the beach. He's at the moment also on holidays. That fits. In Florida, where he spoke to the beach guys or beach girls when he was renting a bike, that they had to replace every 3 months brakes because of rust. And then he came to the idea, to make a bike fully out of plastic, because plastic cannot rust and does not need grease. So from 2005 to 2002, you see on the right picture our CEO Frank Blase with Olaf Scholz on the Hannover Fair in 2022. We are not doing it alone. We are doing this with a Dutch company, Material Bike, and we are working in a partnership since 2022. And yeah, it's going quite well. They already had bikes on the market in the Netherlands. Their frame was from plastic, but now we want to make a bike fully from plastic. The fact about the bike, the big parts, frame, wheel, and fork, will be from recycled plastic. Here next to me, I have a fork, which is 50% from ocean plastics. And all other components will be from recyclable plastic. For example, cranks, but even for this parts, we are at the moment checking if we also can do it with recycled material. All components will be marked with a material ID, that we know exactly from when we produced it, that we do for 2 reasons, of course, to recycle it again, but also to check the quality. The customer benefits, of course, the customer buys a sustainable product. The bike do not need lubricants and cannot rust. That increases the service life. And we are completely supply chain independent. Supply chain independent means everything what we will have on the bike will be produced in Cologne or in the Netherlands. In the beginning, we want to start the production in the Netherlands, and afterwards we want to do it in Cologne. And we have CO2 savings compared to conventional bicycle industries, because the alu frame needs much more energy and CO2 than the normal frame. Correct. We are getting the raw material from Change, that is a startup also in IGUS, which I will explain a bit later, and from Helix. And Material is at the moment developing the big parts. IGUS do all the motion plastics. As already discussed, R&D, production and distribution will be from Cologne. That is the startup which I want to mention. Change, that is here we have the marketplace where we take where we sell recycled material. And if you click there on the right button, recycle now, then you can hand in your plastics, which we take back then and which we recycle. We're doing this especially for our products, of course, for our customers, for example, for energy changes, where we give them to the customer a voucher and get then the material back and sell them a new chain, kind of. We also won a prize for it from the government in the west of Germany, North Westphalia, because we saved 60 tons back then, and now we are around 80 tons of e-changes. So the dream is that we have this really circular economy, that we have garbage, that we get garbage from all over the world, and prepare it, put it in injection or rotor molding machines, make bike out of it, and then we have the material ID that we can take the parts back. We see it also a bit like one bike for the whole life, means we will produce a kid's bike for you, then you give the bike back, and we make a bigger bike, semi-adult bike, and then at the end an adult bike which you can ride for a lifetime. So 3 big why we're doing it. Improve what moves. That is the DNA of IGUS. We want to improve what moves, and not only with the bikes, also with other products. Allowing circularity, that we want to use as much as possible recycled materials and end of use recyclable, and they are reducing CO2 emissions. We all know about the climate change, and also we as IGUS have a target to be until 2025 company without CO2 emissions. And as already mentioned, the production of a plastic frame is way better than of an aluminum frame when it comes to CO2 emissions. So how are we doing this? We are doing this from one source, means development, even compounding. That means how we the material, bakery kind of, the tool manufacturing, the test lab, and the production is all in-house. I will go at first the development. We have a lot of developers. We have 2 or 3 developers. We're only focusing on bikes, and then we have other developers who are specialized in their field, and then we take them out of the departments. Kind of the compounding. It's really important because if you work with recycled material, the biggest challenge is the material itself. That you have really stiff material, and that you have material which you can use, and that you always have the same quality. And there we are compound our materials by ourselves, means we are quite experienced in this. Here's just an example. There's an injection molded headset, and how we do also research and development. We really investigate, or we deep dive into the material. And here you have, on the left side, you have 2 injection molding points, and on the right side you have 1 injection molded point. And now it becomes, in my opinion, even more interesting because we have our own tool manufacturer, means all tools which we make, for example, for our cranks or for our handlebar, we can make in-house, and then we also produce everything in-house. That gives us a lot of flexibility on the speed of producing a product or developing a new product. Now comes the most important part when it comes to new stuff or new products, our testing. At the moment, we have already a lot of the test machines which you see here. For example, we can test our cranks, we can test our handlebar, and we can test our wheels. But end of September, we hope that we will have a full test station for bikes there, that all the parts we produce, we also can test in-house before we send it to an external test. And that makes it, let's say, safe. And that's also how we can show, okay, our parts, if we sell them, they will have the same safeness than aluminium parts. And that is really important for us to show. Here you can see a small video how we test at the moment in-house. We have a really huge test lab, and not only for the bike parts, also for all our other parts. We have 16,000 tests per year, 450 test benches, and 135 trillion test movements. It just gives a small impression what we are doing. That is an external test, and of course, test riding is also really important. That's a vision which we will not achieve in the next 2, also not in the next 5 years, but who knows, maybe in the next 10 years. And we want to produce with local ways where bikes are needed. Means we want to ship our machines around and not bikes all over the planet. Means we want to produce bikes where actually bikes are needed. That saves CO2 emissions, transport time, and I think that is something what we definitely want to achieve. We also have already last year we opened a production in USA, and also one in China last year, where we produce a basic material which we can sell in these continents. So now the last point, which we told at the beginning, we are always looking for partners. We empower an industry to produce sustainable and virtuality maintenance-free and durable bicycles from recyclable materials. That means that we look for partners, OEM partners, who want to build together with us parts from plastics, and which we can recycle later, or which are already recycled. Here you see parts which we also showed on the Eurobike last weekend. For example, the modular frame. There we have the same, what Richard told us already, that you can adapt the motor system quite easily, or the sizes of a bike, and or handlebars, which we also showed last week, where we already have our first customer for. I mean, at the one hand, we want to make the full bike, and on the other hand, we want to make parts, and we are using the full bike. We call it the test lab for the industry, to come to new ideas and to see where we all can use plastic. I say thanks for listening. Looking for the questions later, and wish you all a great day. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sven. And so now I head over to Anna for our last presentation, and then I'm also looking forward for the questions.
Thank you, Anna. Let me just share. Got fewer slides than the rest of you, so it's always good going last. Here we go. So Frog Bike, so who we are an award-winning manufacturer based in the UK, and we solely make children's bikes. So we make lightweight premium bikes for the kids markets. We sell globally, so we are in about 30 countries and about 800 independent bike shops. So where did it come from? So the idea came from our founders, Jerry and Shelley. So you can see them here on their bikes with their kids. So this is back in 2012 when they were sort of looking at new bikes for their kids. They were trying to teach their kids how to ride a bike, and everything they saw on the market was really heavy, difficult to maneuver, and just the innovation that was happening in adults' bikes wasn't really sort of trickling down into the kids' bike market. So bikes really could weigh as much as a child or more, so really difficult to handle. So they saw that as an opportunity. They're cyclists themselves, and they basically set about from the ground up designing a bike that would be perfect for kids. So we worked with sports scientists at Brunel University. So we did a piece of primary research. So basically set up a test rig specially designed for children, put hundreds of children through the test rig, taking lots of different measurements to try and work out what was the optimal position for them, and therefore what was going to be the right geometry for our frames. And after that, we've also continued to innovate along those sort of research lines, and looking at bespoke components that are specifically designed for children. So we've got easy squeeze brake levers, for instance. We've got slimmer grips. So really everything is designed around the child. So we're still a small company. So there's about 30 of us in the head office and around a similar number in our factory down in Wales. But we've sold around 500,000 bikes since we launched. So it's been a great journey. So started back in 2013, and we've now expanded the range to have the widest range of kids bikes on the market. So everything from your balance bikes through to your sort of first pedal sort of non-geared bikes, all the way through to mountain bikes, road bikes, track bikes and more. So we've got a really huge range of bikes out there. So, but the environment has really been at the core of the business from the very beginning. We think about how our decisions impact the environment, and what we've realized is actually those decisions are also commercially the right decisions. So I think importantly, we're not trading off sort of one for the other. So in terms of what we've done in sustainability, I'm just going to talk through these different headings here. So in terms of materials, so we looked at what are the opportunities to reduce the amount of materials that actually go into our bikes. So we've done a lot of work on the design, and we've managed to find lots of different areas of savings. Like we've got different frame welding techniques, which meant we could move to thinner tubes with the same strength. That saved us 200 grams of aluminium per bike. We looked at novel spoke design, so we used fewer spokes in our bikes. That saved us 100 grams of steel. We redesigned our bottom brackets and managed to cut out 90 grams of steel. We've got a different crank design, and that saved us 76 grams of aluminium. So there's a great big long list of ways in which we've managed to cut materials from the bike, which is great from an emissions point of view, but also is fantastic given that we're in a business of selling lightweight bikes, and we've managed to cut around ½ kilo out of the weight of some of our bikes in the process. So we believe that's putting us in the best position commercially as well. And also in terms of materials, we're also looking at more sustainable materials as well. So for example, some novel materials. So we've got rice husk in our pedals. So they're a 50-50 composite between rice husk and plastic. We're also exploring biomaterials at the moment, both for our tires and the other hard plastics on our bike. We've also been through and looked at all of our packaging. So we set up a packaging project looking at how do we reduce plastics. And I'm pleased to say that we are now virtually there. We've almost reduced or eliminated all plastics in our packaging as well. But the big thing for us being a bike manufacturer is the aluminium that goes into our bike. So having done all of the measurement work back in 2019, we quickly worked out that that was really our hotspot in terms of emissions. So that was around 90% or more of our emissions came from the aluminium. And this is an area we've been working on for a really long time. So I guess there's only two ways to reduce the emissions from that. One is to move to producers who use more renewable energy sources in the production of aluminium. And the other alternative is to look at recycled or secondary aluminium, which obviously has much lower embedded emissions. So it's taken us a lot of time and a lot of work to try and move this forwards. So we're speaking to lots of different suppliers. And what we are facing at the moment is we're kind of one of one when we speak to people. So we're asking suppliers, will they use recycled aluminium to produce our frames? But because nobody else in the industry has been asking, we're kind of faced with, oh, well, that's great, but no one else is doing it. So are we going to make these changes to our process just for you? And it's been a real sort of uphill battle. I guess the position we've got to now is we've been able to identify sources of recycled aluminium sort of near our suppliers in China, and we've been able to put the two in touch. So we've taken someone who can supply the raw product and put them in touch with the suppliers of our frames, and we are trying to move that forward. So the problem being that because it's only really us asking for it, we have then got huge minimum order quantities that we have to meet in order to move this forwards. But we are hoping to be there in the next 12 months to be able to move to 25% post-consumer recycled aluminium in our frames and forks. So fingers crossed we will get there. It's just the beginning of the journey. We want to be able to move ultimately up through 50%, 75%, all the way up to 100% recycled aluminium, which would be amazing in terms of our emissions. Then moving on to production and logistics. So we made the decision to reshore the assembly of our bikes back to the UK. So in 2016, we opened our own factory down in Wales, where all of our bikes, except for our balance bikes, are produced. And that's had huge benefits for us, I guess, in terms of we're manufacturing closer to market. So from an emissions point of view and logistics point of view, that's great. But there's also other commercial benefits as well. So for instance, our lead times are much quicker than they were before. And we've got a lot more control over quality, but also other things that impact the sustainability of our operations. So after a long sort of 5-year battle with our convincing our landlords, we've managed to move to renewable energy at our factory and at our offices. We've looked at bringing in new sort of power efficient tools into the factory. We've got electric vehicle charging points. So really on that side, we've moved as far as we can, I think, in that direction for now. Then in terms of reuse and repair, so our bikes, we basically design them to last for as long as possible. So we've got our own testing facility in-house in our factory. All our bikes are tested to destruction. So we really do know that they're robust and we know how long they last. So ultimately, the longer we can keep our bikes in circulation and in good condition, the better that is for the environment. So a few things that we've done in that area. So firstly, we've got standard size parts on our bikes. So that means it's really easy for a consumer to swap out any parts that do wear. We've also sell via our network of independent bike shops. So obviously people have got a point there local to them where they can go back and get the bike repaired when it needs it. And then sort of more recent things that we've done. So we launched an MOT scheme where a customer, a family can buy a secondhand frog bike from anywhere. They can bring that into their local bike shop and they will service it and re-warranty it. So we've got benefits there of making the bike sort of have a longer useful life. It provides a reassurance for consumers. So you're thinking about putting your kids on a secondhand bike, you want to make sure that that is safe. But also it's given us really good or should be giving us really good data on the sort of wear and tear of our bikes. So that helps us then in the design process, again, design for longevity. So we've seen some success there. It's still early days on that program, but the secondhand kids bike market is huge. So we think anything that we can do to make that a better place where bikes are really kept in good quality will help. Then in terms of refurbishment, so we encourage our stores to accept trade-ins and refurb and resell bikes. Disappointingly, the majority haven't embraced this. So we've got some stores who are really on board and see the benefits of this, but most of them, it's something they're not interested in, or where they don't see it as a good fit for their market, or they don't have the space or the workshop time to be able to do it. So for us, that would be the most obvious place where we can move to a more circular model. Other things that we've done to encourage that, so we relaunched a pre-loved area on our website. So this is where we would feature on our website pre-loved bikes that were available at our stores, in the hope that we could help encourage consumers to go to those stores and to purchase those bikes. And again, we've seen really disappointing take-up, so only a handful of stores have been interested in that. So I think ultimately, if we're looking at solving this, our long-term goal is to be able to do this more centrally ourselves and move to a fully sort of closed loop system where we take bikes back ourselves and we're able to reuse them, remanufacture them, or recycle them. But that's, I think, a very long-term sort of plan for us. So that requires a lot of infrastructure. Moving bikes around country or around the world is an expensive and complex business, and that involves investing in the right infrastructure skills and also collaborating with others to make it happen. I can imagine perhaps a system of sort of more regional hubs might make more sense than each individual bike brand trying to do this themselves. We've also faced other challenges than this. So for instance, slightly one that I wasn't really expecting. So insurance, our insurers are not comfortable with taking the risk on us selling secondhand children's bikes. So there's another hurdle there to overcome. But we know that we have to start doing this now, because we will be able to solve these problems in the future. And the bikes that we are producing today are going to be the bikes that we're trying to take back in however many years' time into the system. So what we can do now is start to look at things like designing for disassembly and making that as straightforward as possible, as well as continuing on our path of innovation to try and reduce the amount of sort of impacts that we're having on the environment in the meantime. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you also for putting out the challenges that you face right now. I think that was also really interesting. And I already have some questions that also regard you and the collaboration that you mentioned. Helen Gaspar asked, when it comes to circularity, accurate data and sharing that information among industry players are crucial for effectively managing the entire life cycle of bikes. Do you collaborate with partners or make use of shared platforms to facilitate the sharing of this critical information across all actors, thereby enabling industry-wide circularity? That was a long question, but I kind of want to break it into two parts. One of them was you asking if there was anyone interested in having recycled aluminium. I have already heard of a couple of players who are actually interested in collaborating on recycled aluminium. So I'm wondering why you haven't heard of anyone or nobody wanted to collaborate with you. I have already received a nod from Richard. So what do you think we need so there's more collaboration between the players and that they actually talk with each other? Because I think recycled aluminium is actually a big topic in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, because I think what's been holding the industry back is being a little bit closed about who your suppliers are. And I think the first point there is really understanding and mapping out the shared suppliers between us all, and that way we can then work together with our existing suppliers to move forwards on it.
Yeah, thank you. So we would actually have to talk a little bit more with each other, right? So that's also maybe a question. Yeah, Richard, feel free to answer.
Yeah, maybe one thing to add on that. I think that's spot on, and we would definitely need to get in touch after the session on how we can get recycled aluminum in there as well. And that's also what we did with Tire as a Service. So we developed the Tire as a Service not just as a one-on-one initiative between us and the supplier Victoria. No, we especially made it public, and we even promoted it, because for them it doesn't work if it's only us as a market. So we really need more people to join also this circular market, because the more people join, the bigger the market, the more products there will be developed.
Yeah, and maybe also Sven, maybe you can also elaborate on that. You are right. You collect a lot of data, right? Is there anyone you collaborate with, and do you share your data with other companies, or do you collaborate on your recycled plastic projects?
Yes, actually, for aluminium frames, we don't have a lot of data. But for plastic, of course, we collaborate together with Material. That's the company we're working together with. They work closely with Helix, it's a Dutch company in Maastricht. Then we have 3 startups now, which are only focusing on recycling plastics. That's Change, that's Surplus, who's in Hamburg located. And then in the east of Germany, there's Mura, which makes oil again from plastics. It's a development project also. And yeah, in the bicycle industry, there is not yet so much plastic involved. I mean, on a lot of bikes, there's plastic, but not for frames, for example. And that's why I invite the full industry to contact me or to contact us and think about different solutions in the bicycle industry. That's also what we say on our website. We have a platform, and we want to, when we are looking for partners, to do it together with them.
Yeah, thank you. And also based on maybe the last discussion, we talked about all the materials. Is it possible to maintain performance and safety with recycled and reused products and components? Maybe also, maybe Toussaint, you can go first this time because you sell all the refurbished bikes. And also, I'm also interested in what Anna and Sven have to say about that.
Yeah, I think as far as we're concerned, our focus has been so far to keep the frame intact. And so I think that's, and so most of our work has been really about repairing components or replacing where they need to be, especially, of course, consumables. And so, at this stage, we haven't explored any of that, using, new material and recycled material to actually repair the bikes. I think one challenge we have ahead of us and one opportunity as well is really looking into where, when we replace parts, we can actually reuse as much as possible. And so today we try to repair as much as we can. And so, we won't replace a full wheel. We'll always respoke it, etc. But we really want to make sure and try to push internally how much of our repairs comes from reused and recycled material as opposed to just brand new parts. But we're not in the process of building entirely new bikes from scratch. So I'm sure Anna, Sven, you might have additional perspective on that front.
Yeah, so recycled aluminium, we've been doing some trials. So we've got 25% recycled aluminium, so that's post-consumer recycled. And we have a sample frame, and we have tested that in our testing facility. And that frame is just as strong as all of our existing frames. And I know there was a question about, as you move to more and more recycled content, what happens to that? And I think there's a nervousness that's sort of in the industry about how strong those products might be. And I think the solution is just to try it and to test it and see what happens. And I know that the higher the recycled content, the more impurities there are. So the more difficult perhaps the process becomes, but I don't think that's a reason to not aim big and see how we go. So we've already got plans to see whether we can test 50% recycled aluminium next. But it is a process. And I think once we start on that line, I think we'll see a lot more movement. It's just making sure there's enough people out there and enough demand out there to push people to really develop this properly.
Actually, I cannot more agree. It all comes with testing, and trying. We try a lot of different materials, post-consumer, ocean plastics. And for example, this is fork which we have here, passed an external test, 50% recycled material, 50% new material, and now we go for 60 and then we go for 70. And that's the way how to deal with it, I think. Testing and failing and learn new what to change. And that's what we also in the process at the moment. It takes a lot of time. But yeah, I think it's worth it, not even only for the bicycle industry, also for other industries. If you can show, okay, you can do it with 80% recycled material, why you cannot do it in the car industry or whatever.
Yeah, thank you. And so we talked about plastic and aluminium, but someone asked also if there's some special challenges concerned with batteries. And Richard, you already mentioned your 10-year warranty battery, which I think is quite exciting news. But maybe also you can elaborate on that, and maybe also Toussaint can elaborate on challenges concerning batteries.
Yeah, so it's a good one. I think the biggest challenge in getting to circular products is indeed the e-components. I think I also answered one question in the chat already, and I think like we as a bike, like the batteries are used in many more industries, and they face the same problem. So we also really rely on, let's say, information in that area or innovation in that area to keep on improving. We focus on, if the material is there, let's focus on extending the lifetime as much as possible, because extending the lifetime by a factor of 2 reduces the climate impact by 50%. So that's a direct relationship, and that's what we're really focusing on. And right now there's a lot of stuff to win still in that area, right? For example, if you look at the current e-bike battery of one of the biggest brands there is, that's all a tube with cells that are connected and welded together. Well, if you already stop welding and start finding other ways of connecting these cells, we can more easily repair individual cells or replace individual cells or a group of cells. And that's what we're focusing on in this battery innovation. So not you have a single chunk of cells, but you have groups of cells which you can interchange and then have a new purpose. Because after the e-bike battery is used, that's really focused on high density, low weight, high energy density, low weight. Maybe afterwards it can still be used in home batteries, right? So you can extend the lifetime of these cells easily by years to come, and that's what we are focusing on. In the end, we rely on the industry also to innovate, and I think there's already cells coming that are less reliant on cobalt, for example. There are also other ways of storing energy that could be useful for bikes as well. And we are closely following that, and yeah, we are happy to be any launching customer or pilot customer to see how this works out in the field.
And maybe just adding to that, so I share a lot of that assessment, and of course we are on the second life part for all brands. One thing we do is make sure that we are able to actually perform a full battery health check and test before of course refurbishing the bike and giving it a new owner. And that's actually one of the preconditions for us to buy any bike, is to make sure that we have the tool. And so we do have a couple of brand specific testers, a couple of brand agnostic testers, but we always make sure that we are in a position to perform a full battery test before we give it a new life, so that we can share, of course, what the battery health is. And that's the first point of information. I think battery have actually a longer lifetime than most people expect. People are used to smartphones that die after 2 years, but they get charged every day, and most e-bikes are charged once or twice a week, and so typically have a much longer lifetime. But second is making sure that if we go below a certain battery health level, that we do then ideally refurbish that. And so we work with a number of partners. It's the only step of that process that we actually outsource, is refurbishing those batteries by replacing those cells, as Richard was mentioning. And then on some occasions we have to replace by a new battery, and then provide, like, give the old one to a recycling partner. But overall, I do expect a lot more progress to come on that front. And I think the repairability and recyclability of batteries is going to be a major challenge for the next couple of years.
Thank you for elaborating on that. And also another question that just came up, and maybe also Anna can start on that, but maybe everyone who wants to can elaborate on that. Are consumers keen to buy circular? Is there reluctance among consumers or perhaps some retailers to promote circular products? Anna, you already mentioned that you have some problems with retailers, I think. Or like, what is your take on this question on the consumer side?
Yeah, we don't have heaps of data on us because we sell to bike shops who then sell to consumers. So what we hear is I guess is funneled through that. So all we know is anecdotally that in some shops there's a really huge market for secondhand or rental, and in others, in the majority of, in our case, the stores that we work with aren't particularly interested at the moment, and we're hoping that's going to change. And we do also work with a bike leasing company, so as one of our customers, and we know that they're growing pretty strongly, so there clearly is going to be more and more demands out there, and I think there has to be, otherwise we're we're going to have a big problem in the future. So yeah, sorry, I don't have more data to share on that.
Yeah, maybe Toussaint can elaborate on that, because probably his target group are the people who buy circular, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one challenge that we see our partners face is that, it's hard to build two things. One is it's hard to build the distribution channels and the consumer awareness for multiple offerings. And so when people come to you for a new product and they know they expect the latest version, they expect what's most up to date, it can be difficult on top of that and in parallel to that to sell secondhand and to explain what goes behind that and build trust behind that. And the second is that it's a different operation as well. And if you want to do it well, it requires an entirely new set of know-how. It requires performing different tests. It requires providing different levels of warranty. And so what we found is, and the reason we work with 700 retailers to date, is that they love the idea of being able to provide the trade-in solution to their customers without having to manage the hassle of determining the price to buy back, determining the price to resell, and managing the repair operation. But I definitely expect and encourage retailers that want to do it themselves. And it's super encouraging to hear, Anna, that some of your stores are actually already seeing some success. But I'm unfortunately not surprised to hear that it's not the case for everyone. I think that at the end of the day, it's also a different proposition to consumers and a different operation to run. And that's why we're happy to help and partner with a number of these e-bike retailers today in Europe and the US.
It's probably worth adding as well that the sort of informal secondhand market is huge. So to the extent that we're trying to control things, us as panelists, it's the solution is already partly out there. It exists in eBay and Facebook Marketplace, and the trading, the number of bikes that you see available there secondhand is absolutely massive, and certainly is in kids' bikes. And I guess it's what is the role as a bike brand in, I guess, stepping a little bit into that market and being able to put that stamp of actually this bike has been tested, this is safe. And actually that you legitimize some of those sales, or you reach a broader market of the consumers who aren't perhaps willing to take that risk today, particularly for us with children's bikes. Perhaps we can widen the appeal of that by stepping into that more directly.
Well, yeah, one thing I want to add to this as well is that we see in our customer group that sustainability or circularity is not necessarily primary arguments to buy a subscription or to take a swap feed. But there are, let's say, secondary arguments that are linked to it, right? Customers really value a high quality bike. Well, a high quality bike is a durable bike, is a more sustainable bike. People really appreciate a safe bike. A safe bike means durable parts, means that it's regularly checked, which is also more circular. So I think in the end, I still feel that consumers see sustainability and circularity as something separate, and it's maybe adding cost or something like that, while the things can really join together. And I think especially in the future, when we get more rules and legislation in Europe on carbon border taxes and anti-dump rules and whatever, I think it becomes more and more cost effective to have locally repaired, locally assembled, locally produced, and in the end, then cost will also become a co-argument together with sustainability. So maybe consumers are not yet really aware of this, as we don't really see it back. They do tell the story about sustainability, but in the end, I think that will come together.
Yeah, and you also mentioned policies that might be implemented or that already implemented are. Maybe that's also an interesting question for all of you, maybe from a British perspective and from a European perspective. What policies would help you or encourage you to be more sustainable? And maybe there are also some policies that you say, well, if this is abolished, we can get more sustainable now. Maybe you have some ideas on this as well.
Yeah, well, I have quite some ideas on the policy, and I think there's a lot of good things already happening in this field. So we have extended supplier responsibility now coming up as part of the Green Deal, reporting things on CSRD. But what we really, I think, and there's also how can we really include the bigger players in this? In the end, it's also about really the rules. So what are the rules of this level playing field that we want to create? In many cases, we in this call are front runners in some areas, and we can do that, but front runners is also expensive. So in the end, we want to create a bigger market. We want to have more players join this to create more efficiency in there as well. So I think if we would have better design legislation, so if there are certain materials that you cannot recycle, don't use those, because then we know we're going to end up in landfill or incineration. So we need to just make sure that we don't use those materials. And also in production techniques, right? If we glue stuff together, even though if they are individually recyclable, if you glue stuff together like a saddle, it becomes really, really difficult to recycle, and that's a hassle for the end user. So I think their circularity would really benefit. And I think last but not least, having this, let's say, to prevent technology from aging, I think we need to force suppliers to keep providing these spare parts, because that's the easiest way on making products live for a very long time. If you have this design rule on repairability and having spare parts available for the end of life, I think then we make a huge jump in, seeing products more for a longer lifetime, not just for the use phase, or looking towards products that they could have a way longer lifetime than they have right now.
Sven, I think you also had something to add to this, right? Maybe also elaborate on, because you put up like the product chain, you try to put the whole product chain in like locally, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I know from the past also that especially the last 2-3 years, when it comes to spare parts, when it comes to new orders for parts, that they were so difficult to become to get. Sorry, and that definitely need to change. I'm at the moment, you also of course want to make an e-bike one day out of the Argus bike, and I'm looking for European suppliers in the electric field, and then really hard to get or really hard to find. And there you see already that we are quite far behind. And there, when it comes to policy, I mean, in the Netherlands, it's a dream to cycle there, but especially also in Germany or in France, something need to change when we want to have more people on bikes. Then we need to change the infrastructure, of course.
Sure, and also two quite specific questions to you, Sven. What recycling process are you applying, a mechanical or a chemical recycling? And therefore, how often can your bike be recycled after the end of life?
It's a difficult question. I'm not super deep into all the technologies, but I know that we do a bit of both. We have one startup where we use a mechanical recycling, where we just make new granular out of it. I believe that is mechanical recycling. And then we have another startup in the east of Germany where we really make new oil out of all the plastics. There we use a new technology, but yeah, it goes really deep into the recycling process. And yeah, the other question was?
The other question was, how often can your bike be recycled after?
Correct. Yeah, it depends. I know, especially for energy changes, which we take back and which we then recycle again, then we have 96% same quality. And yeah, it depends how good is the material which you at first got in. And it's not so easy to answer this question. Also, there we need to learn from experience. But for our energy changes, we have 96% one-time recycling, same quality.
Okay, yeah, and I guess we will see in the next 10 years, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think the insurance part we've already touched a little bit upon. I'm not seeing any new questions right now. I mean, there's another question concerning batteries, like what happens when the battery does not generate enough power to cycle? Maybe Toussaint, you can answer this question.
Yeah, I mean, there's really two different situations, right? There's the situation where that's the case after for a bike that we have purchased, in which case it will mean that we need to refurbish or replace that battery. And recycle the old one, and that will impact, of course, the purchase price at which we buy the bike. But ultimately, it means that the rest of the bike is probably still good to be used, and so we might as well, give everything else another usage and another owner, even if the battery itself needs to be replaced. And we're working hard to refurbish rather than fully replace as many batteries as possible, but not all technologies enable such refurbishment at a high quality level, maintaining high levels of safety, etc. And so on occasions, we need to actually replace and recycle the old one. And then there is the odd situation where that would occur after purchase, in which case that falls under the warranty. And so the customer would benefit from our warranty and get effectively the battery either repaired or replaced in order to solve their need.
Thank you. So in the last round of questions will be something I missed. It was quite at the beginning of the session. It was for Richard and Toussaint, but maybe it also applies to the others. In which countries would you seek to expand next, and what are the key obstacles that you face in setting up shop in new markets? Maybe Toussaint, you can already start because you're in the expansion mode right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we wanted to, it was key to what we do to make sure that we wanted to be live in Europe, Western Europe mostly, and North America. And so we currently cover the 4 largest e-bike markets in Europe, but of course we intend to, in the next couple of years, offer Upway services in additional European countries. They're nearby. You get cross-border benefits of buying one bike in a market and selling it in the other. And ultimately, wherever there's large e-bike adoption, we believe that we might have a role to play. So we will consider, I saw that Switzerland was mentioned earlier in a comment. So Switzerland is on our radar. The UK is on our radar. Southern Europe is on our radar. So it's a matter of when rather than if. I think the key challenges, frankly, is more a matter of focus. I think it's already quite a steep trajectory. We launched in France end of 2021, launched in Germany, Benelux, Belgium and the Netherlands in early 2022, and the US early 2023. That's been already quite a challenge. And so we are making sure that we can fully control our operation everywhere before continuing to expand. But definitely expect more launches in the next 2 to 3 years in Europe as far as Upway is concerned.
And for us, I think we are currently live in 8 countries. We are, of course, also looking / dreaming of other countries, but indeed to start somewhere, we need to really make sure that there is, in the end, a possible market, because we need quite some, let's say, infrastructure investments on stores, cars, people, warehouses, all those kind of things, and getting our bikes there. So we really need to make sure that there's a market. And right now, for example, in the UK, we're only live in London. If London is a success, we also feel more confident to expand to other cities throughout the UK, Oxford, Cambridge, Birmingham, Manchester, those kind of cities. So I think there, in the countries where we're active, there's still a lot of potential. And at the same time, other parts of the world are also still developing. And I think that also for Toussaint, that's quite similar, right? You need to have, we're not gonna develop the cycling culture by ourselves as a company, right? We need more stakeholders in this. We need the city, we need the people, we need civil society, we need more companies that are also providing bicycles. So there we really need to keep a close eye on how quickly is the cycling culture developing. Well, in times of COVID, actually, that went quite fast for quite some countries. And also during COVID, we expanded to France and UK and Italy. So I'm not saying we should definitely not go back to that situation, but there was a catalyst for change to a cycling culture. And I do think, well, some of those catalysts or changes in cycling culture could be an accelerator for us to expand to other areas as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. There are new questions coming in now, but I think I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you for your great presentations and for answering all of these questions. And also thank you to all of the participants for asking these great questions. I think it was a really great session, and I will give back now to Jack.
Well, thanks, Jana. And yeah, I think we've covered everything we could cover, at least in 90 minutes. That was a very packed session. We've learned that there's circularity raises questions across the supply chain, across the thinking, from the smallest plastic component to the battery, to the retail model, to the regulation. There's plenty of things we need to take into account. And this will be something that with Cycling Industries Europe, we will continue working on and collaborating on very strongly, because we think that one of the keys to any solution in the cycling industry is more collaboration. And on that note, I would like to warmly thank our panelists today, Richard, Toussaint, Sven, and Anna. You've all been fantastic and wonderful. And of course, Jana, your moderation has been fantastic, and that's something great for us. Now, I guess it's time for a summer recess. I hope you'll have a nice summer break, that you'll be cycling somewhere with a durable and sustainable high-quality bike, as Richard told us. And on that note, I leave you and hope to see you with us soon at Cycling Industries Europe. If you're with us, we'll see you in a working group. If you're not, well, don't forget to join us. On that note, ciao. Bye-bye.